Hi all. We'll just give it a few minutes. I'm waiting for my co-poet to join as well. Let's give it a few minutes. I think we have 4 more minutes. I'm just waiting. I'm seeing a lot of friends joining in. Thank you very much. We are going to have a two-poet live session. I'm waiting for my co-poet to join as well. And meanwhile, I'll use this 3 minutes to do a little plug of my book of poems. It's called The Vast Empty. It's available on Amazon. It's published by The Right Order. They have joined as well. They've been very encouraging and supportive. So thank you very much. And I see lots of my friends and followers have joined. I get thinking, hi, good to see you. Henna, good to see you. Till dawn off, hello. Yogyan, very nice to see you as well. So this book of poem, The Vast Empty, I published early this year. It's a book of about 65 poems, but like I was telling a friend that maybe it's far more than 65, maybe it's 165, maybe it's 200, I don't know, because as a reader, you interpret these poems in your own way, and it can have a very different meaning for you. So when you read it, when this book is with you in your hands, these poems are yours as well. And therefore, it is your interpretation. So some people have a very different takeaway from this poem, from several of these poems. Some people have actually come back and said that they've found answers that they were looking for from these poems. And I think the reason why is also because these were written in a very meditative state and, plumbing depths of my emotion, knowledge, sometimes wisdom, though I don't want to sound grand. But yes, I think when you meditate and when you're sitting still and quiet, you do find a lot of wisdom coming in. And I'm also trying to build a community of poets and people who love poems, because whenever I meet with people and I ask if they read poetry or if they're interested in the genre, they get kind of daunted by it, because they go back to something which is esoteric, which is difficult, which brings back memories of 10th standard, 12th standard, um, the syllabus when they had to mug poems, and no one wants to do that anymore. And I tell them that these poems are not about anything which is anguish ridden, which is difficult to understand. It's just very simple expression of several of your deep thoughts, which I've tried to capture. So check it out and tell me what you think. Of course, I am looking for a lot of support and encouragement. And hi, Sharad, good to see you as well on this. Yeah, you get to see different sides of a person. So those of you who know me as a work colleague, this is a very different avatar. I really hope you enjoy this as well. So let me see if my co-poet has joined. Ah, there you are. Hi, Himi. Let me see if... Okay, let me see if she's able to join. Keep the comments coming.
Hi.
Hi there. Oh, we have someone else who's joined? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. How are you doing?
I'm well, Himi. So glad that we're finally able to do it, coordinating our schedules.
Yes.
I think we've already got a lot of your followers, my followers, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone.
Yes. Thank you guys for joining in. And I'm really excited for the live about just joining in and talking about your book and my book. There's so much exciting stuff to talk about.
Yeah. So Himi, let's get started. I know we have a hard stop at 7:20. I'm okay to stay on and engage with people if they want to, but otherwise, Himi has to leave. Himi, I've been reading your poems. They're fabulous. So congratulations on your book. And I really want to ask you, one poet to another,
Yes.
what started you off on your journey, and how do you draw your inspiration?
You know, it's like I can't say that it's because of one thing or like something specifically inspired me to become a poet. Because it was sort of a way of expressing myself as a young kid, expressing myself when I was just almost 7 to 8 years old, and I was immersed in a lot of the art forms as a kid. So I was part of dancing for really long, and I've been a choreographer for most of my life, and I think it was just sort of like understanding when you observe things a lot and feel them also, feel other people's pain, your pain or joy, and you receive that sort of empathetic standpoint you want to express, and that sort of like come out from there, and yeah, so I think that's where I draw my inspiration from, by observing, if that makes more sense.
That's great. So you've always been in the creative pursuit, so to speak, right?
Yes.
So there was always an artistic side to you.
Yes.
So how do you balance between your various art forms of dance and writing? And I dare say that you're also into music.
No, I'm not. I've learned it, but sadly, I'm not the best musician or singer. And but no, I think it's mostly about like that's my way of life. That's just been my life always. It's sort of like me asking you, how do you balance your corporate life versus with your art life? You know, it's a hard one for you. It's probably harder for you, I feel like, than it is for me, because my way of life is the artistic space. I tried dabbling into corporate writing and getting into that space, but I feel like it has a it takes a toll on the artist that you become. Like, it also takes a toll on how often you allow yourself to feel. I think it's a painful journey to be an artist. Not, I'm not like trying to make it a, you know, like a benchmark that pain is where you start the art, but like it is sort of true that you need to allow yourself to feel things that then sort of manifest in that. What
Yeah.
about you? Like, how do you kind of find inspiration and
I it's it's a great question. So I love what you said. Pain doesn't have to be the starting point of art form. I think
yeah,
for me it's come with deep reflection, and that deep reflection has come through stillness, and that stillness happens when I'm with nature. So I can say I think about 90% of my inspiration is when I'm with nature. Uh, and my poems are all about stillness, beauty, and experiencing the joys of life. Sometimes about wonder, amazement, and my poems also, like you said, they don't come from a place of pain, but of wonder, and that's the recurring theme. And I think my aspiration was to get people back into poetry through feeling good, feeling refreshed, thinking about themselves, connecting with their inner selves, and try to sort of answer the questions that they've always had in their minds but really couldn't express it. Some of them are so complex, right?
yeah,
And you're right, it is tough to balance a corporate career with any artistic pursuit.
yeah,
And I always wondered, how do people do it? And I've said this before to a few friends, and in one of my previous videos as well, that I was reading a book called The Daily Rituals of Artists by Mason Curry, and it's a fantastic series. I love reading it. As you can see from my, it's like a room full of books. That actually says that most poets or writers or artists also had a side gig, and that was usually a very boring side gig. So you're very fortunate in that sense, Himi, because you've, kind of married both the pursuits. Both of them are artistic. Otherwise, someone was an accountant, someone was a banker, someone was, teaching music to children and things like that. Yeah.
yeah. Because it's not like one way of being an artist, right? There are many ways of being an artist because there's 7 billion people, and I believe all of them are capable of art. It's
Yeah.
just that, like, we're in this pursuit of a rat race. We've built a world like that where we don't let people tap into it. I remember when I was younger, people always saying, what is she going to do by being a dancer? What is she going to do by being a writer? You know, like, or not writer, writing. Actually, my parents didn't know I write, so they only found out much later. But they used to always wonder, like, people used to ask them that question, you know, what is she going to do by studying dance? And then you don't know what something leads you to. My career in dance or my experience in dance led me to understanding the stage, and it led me to understanding the power stage has and how much at home I feel there. So my poetry ends up coming on stage, and and it came to the stage first before it came in a book. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I like the comment by Ayushman Basu. So relatable with the side gig. Have to do a consultancy to pursue my.
Yeah.
That's exactly the same thing. I work with a large consulting firm, leading a diverse team across the globe, so on and so forth. It's very difficult, right? And when you look at how difficult it is for
Yeah.
poetry to take center stage, how difficult it is to promote a book and to get sales from book, I don't think it would feed anyone, right? Just through
I
poetry or writing.
cannot
So
ask
keep at your job, Ayushman.
people. He's actually a very talented musician as well. Like,
I'm sure.
people like ask uh people ask me this question all the time, like, how much money are you making from your book? And I'm like, like, people just believe being an author just somehow makes you like really, and somehow you're earning a lot of money. The truth of it, everybody needs to understand how much they're paying for that book. Let's start there. And then we start going,
Yeah, how much are they paying for the book? And
how much
but it's yeah. Now that you mentioned your book, why don't you show us glimpses of your book? I know a lot of my followers would like to see it, and I'm sure yours as well.
I would love to
Maybe, yeah.
yeah, we can. I'll start. Here's unrooting, and unrooting sort of came about as, uh, well, do I want to dive into unrooting? The idea of why unrooting was called unrooting. It came from a space of uh, understanding that I wanted to feel like I have unlearned and lifted up and left. But I wanted a connection to the earth, and I wanted a connection to understanding that I have roots, and it's not about somebody pulling me out, which would be like uprooting, but it's sort of action of doing it yourself, and that was the point of it. Thank you, Ayushman.
Very nice, very nice. Would you like to read a poem?
Oh,
There was this passage from one of your poems that I really loved. I'd love for you to read it. And you read so well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Which one? Was it If Men Were Seasons?
Yes, that's the one. That's right. And especially the last one.
Yeah.
The last para, that'll be great.
I read the last. But it's giving it away, the last piece, the last part of that.
Okay, read whatever you like. Any of your favorites, I think.
I think I'll actually read something I've not read before on, out loud.
Okay.
I seldom read it out loud, so maybe we can do one of those. Would you like a love poem?
Yes. Always.
Sure.
Look at the number of hearts that are popping up. Yes, so does our audience. Go for it.
I wrote this one for the understanding of modern day love and just how we confuse what is love and what's liking. So it's called Territory. I don't know the in-between of love and liking. Hell, I don't even know liking. I only know love. The common ground between the two is a river with snakes in it, and so I don't wish to enter it. On the other side of town, where love isn't just in the air, it's in the soil and the clouds too. Where the winds whirl up a tornado of oxytocin and throw in a dash of dopamine and serotonin. So it gets difficult to look beyond the storm, where you stand, to the other side of the river, where you stand so patiently. And each time you take the leap but fail to jump, the rain on my side somehow gets wilder. And I keep getting better at dancing in the rain. Thank you.
Very nice. Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Why don't you read a piece of yours and also tell me why you called it The Vast Empty?
Yeah, so I'll start with the pen name of Turiya. Obviously, that's not my name. So when I write, and I've said this, it's I get into a state, and there's only in that state that I can write.
Yeah.
And that state is deeply reflective, meditative, all of that. And as per Vedantic philosophy, there are 4 states. The state of Turiya is the state of ultimate consciousness. To put it very simply, it's quite a complex topic, right?
Yeah.
And that's really about knowing yourself, about being one with everything else. So that was one part of, and most of my poems are written in that state.
Right.
And the vast empty, because when I imagine writing, I'm in a space which is so beautiful, clean, vast, and it's like I'm on some plateau of Tibet or amongst mountains or just in space floating, right? There's nothing. So that's where the poems come from. So I'm going to read one which I've addressed a lot of topics like love, like longing, like devotion, meditation, just the quest for yourself and slowing down, and also on death, like what do we mean by death and how does it happen? So let me read this out. And this is the cover I was telling, and I have this strange quirk that I collect bookmarks, and this was one leaf which I picked up. So I have these kind of leaves and feathers as bookmarks. So this poem is called Death, from the book The Vast Empty. I wake up from my dream incomplete. I left behind parts of me in my dream, like markers in the vast labyrinth, stretching beyond into the ancient and into another realm. Knowing that sleep will bring me back to this exact same point, to restart, to chart my next life. So, is this how we die? Do we willfully disintegrate, slowly and subtly, leaving behind parts of ourselves across space and time, when the mind dissolves in sleep and when we travel in our dreams?
Wow.
So,
That's
so,
really
so there are a number of poems like this which have where I've tried to express, everyone's kind of questions around, where does the sky end? How big is infinity? And, what is love? And how do we
big
relate to
question.
devotion? Yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very big questions, right? Like, and I think poetry, as poets, we're also somewhere philosophers in some
Yes.
ways, philosophizing our own thoughts, and we also don't know much about what's right and what's wrong. I always say this, it's never the sorts that poetry can never be an answer to the rationale, you know.
Yeah. And I think it's beautifully said, because it's about taking something which is, you have a frame of something and you find something which is totally out of context and you try and marry the two, and then something beautiful comes out of it. And thank you, Ayushman. uh, Thanks for the appreciation. And so you're right. I think all creativity comes from some philosophy. I mean, I dare say that, but certainly for poets. So, who's influenced you, Himi, when you were on your journey? I mean, is it philosophy? Is it other poets? Is it musicians? Where have you drawn your inspiration from?
I think I think, like I said, so I my life is very dramatic, I would say.
Okay, tell us more.
Drama speaks, but like I think it's always like whenever I experience a lot of things, I have a I become almost observant of that time. Now I've learned that no matter the circumstance, there will be a poem. You know, now I've understood that, like, whatever is going on, if I get nothing out of it, I'm gonna get lovely words coming out of me at the end of this. So it's but it's life, and if I'm honest, that's just the most boring answer to this, but it is the truth of it. You know, like, life is my teacher, and the more you trust life, the more life teaches you, right? So
I have just that one poem for you called Words.
yeah,
I
i've
hope you like it.
I've read it. I love it.
You've read it, so I'm just going to leave it for the viewers to. Ayushman Basu has got some nice comments. Sharad, I did answer the question, but I'll repeat that in a few minutes as well. Um, I also wanted, is there like a time of the day that you write, or a particular way that you write, Himi? How do you write? How does the creative process unfold for you?
I uh, I mentioned this, I think, once in an interview, but like, I it's a happening. It's not a process that I sit down and write. And I know this is different because people as disciplined writers sit every day and sort of write. But for me, because my poems are this book is a span of 8 years, you know. It was never written because it was never written as a book. They
Yeah.
are amalgamations of poems, um and it sort of is a happening. So I feel like when I'm done processing an event, or I'm in the middle of this heightened chaos inside of me, that's when the poem comes. When I cannot make sense of things, because the mind is a visual space, and the mind is also sometimes blank but noisy. And when I write stuff, I just kind of put it down to what that looks like. Like, here's the minced out, filtered version of everything that my brain is thinking in a concise, maybe 5 stanzas at most, you know, because there's not much. Like, I'm also one of those kind of people who's like, okay, let's move on from this now. Yeah, like, so when I'm done writing a poem, I'm done with that feeling. So most of the time.
I think I can resonate with that. And again, I was telling some, I think one of the previous interviews that I did, or a live program, was, you can't put a structure to poetry. And I always say this, the time will find you and the poem will write itself.
Yeah.
Right? You just need to be there, available for time. And unlike writing a novel where you have a theme, and I've spoken to a few novelists, and they're like, it's on an Excel sheet and they have these characters, they have these chapters, and things just move on, and then there's discipline. And it's all structured, you need to really think through. I think writing poems is just, it pops in your head, something, just you have that moment. It could be from a random word, a stray word, something that comes through. And that's it. And that leads to a string of thoughts and then emotions, and it just forms itself. So sometimes I always feel that the poem writes itself. You just have to wait. And that's where you have to be in that vast empty and space and sit, and it'll come to you. Right?
But it happened to you sometimes, like you have a thought and you don't have the time for it. And then like that thought passes and that poem is lost. Does that ever happen?
Yes, all the time. I struggle, and I know there was this fantastic something, a deep thing that it was so poignant and so profound. And the poem, there were like one or two lines, and then it's just gone, right? So, and that's the most frustrating part. So now I started to put in prompts, but it's not easy to go back to that time and capture that feeling in the exact same, you have to do it right there, right then.
Exactly.
Right?
It's almost like you need to go to the washroom, or like you need to do this, or like it has to happen now, otherwise it will not happen. Like otherwise something else will happen and you don't want that to happen.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I really feel like, that moment you should just capture that and be still. And maybe that's why sometimes, having this, trying to balance out what you do during the rest of your day, and then that that moment of inspiration when it comes to you or occurs to you, just drop everything else and chase down that thread, down to whichever rabbit hole it takes you down, but still it's worth it, because it'll always be a beautiful place when you come out from the other end.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Is there like so you have a very decorated career, and your life is extremely, like, you are known in your space for the things you do, and it's a very I guess your personality at work would be quite different to when you are a writer and when you write your poems. How much of that overlaps in terms of how much does that like make you feel like you don't sometimes your logic comes in the way of your emotions, and your emotions, you know what I mean to say?
I
Like,
totally know what you mean. So when I published this book, or when it was, people were, I think, quite stunned, mostly my colleagues, because they've never seen this side of me, this softer, more romantic, thoughtful side of me. I mean, I'm quite thoughtful and nice people's person and all of that stuff, from what my colleagues say. But yeah, this is a completely new side of me, and for the longest time I tried to keep both very separate. Right? This is me in the workspace, chasing down transformation projects and whatever, delivering whatever. And then there is this me, which is the more gentle, quiet, meditative. Turiya, yeah, that's it. Turiya versus Mamta. Right? So it's very difficult, and I try to keep it separate. And that's why I need to climb into that space and then be Turiya to write poems, because as Mamta, it won't come to me. Right? So I've kept it very separate. It's only now that I've started to show parts of Turiya at work, because I was so hesitant about bringing that side of me. But then I think it's all about integrating it finally, right? It adds a dimension which is quite unique, and it's different. But yeah, I try to keep it separate. There's none of my logical, rational self that comes into my poems.
I'm glad that it doesn't, because then we wouldn't have the vast empty.
For sure we wouldn't. But I think a lot of the experiences, perhaps, right, might have influenced it. But when you think of it, not necessarily, right? Look, I know that you had a stop. Are you able to extend for a few more minutes?
Like 2 more minutes. That's all right. Don't worry. Yeah. 2 to 3 more minutes is fine. We can stop at 7:30. That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think there are some other questions coming in, and
Yeah, if you
what's
guys
next? What's next for you? What's on the cards? Is there one more book in the offing, or is it too early to think about it?
I don't want to give too much away, but there are 3 more in the like coming, and they're not only poetry. So I have a few ideas. Obviously, there is no like time limit to when these 3 are coming because they have been in the works for like some million years. And
Okay,
I'm a very, very, I take my time with
good,
certain things.
good.
I don't want to ever rush into my art, coming out just for the sake of it. So yeah, it's just like like I said, this book was in 8 years in the making, and I never thought of publishing it. So when I think of publishing something, it's not going to end up being. That's why my book right now, the next one I'm writing, has been. I started it 4 years ago, and that book is only halfway through. And I actually opened today to write it again after really long. I needed a pause for 1 whole year from that book because it's that intense for me.
No,
Yeah.
I think I can. Yeah, that's true. I also didn't think I'd publish, but and the whole thing is, my worry is when you publish a book, then you somehow it takes away from the art, and then you're more worried about who's going to read it, will they like it, will they judge it, and all that, right? And the poems that we've written, right, what you've written, Himi, and what I've written, they're deeply personal. It's almost like laying bare your soul for people to kind of judge and take it out of context as well. I mean, I've written one poem on obsession. It's
Yeah.
and people say, so who is this for? Who is this about? And it's like, it's not about anyone. It can be whoever you want it to be. It can be about a city, it can be about a career, it could be about the alternative paths. So but you're suddenly open to, you've opened yourself up and you're showing your vulnerable self, your deepest thoughts, and people can think you're completely cuckoo or completely nuts,
Literally.
or yeah.
Here, when I did that, by the way, when I wrote the book, I never even thought once that, hold on, this is like literally your most personal thing. And when my show as well in Delhi, I got up on stage, and Delhi is where I'm from, right? So though I don't live in Delhi, but I'd come back to Delhi, and I was like, hang on, these people know me since like I was a kid, and like I'm just about to like read out everything that I here's topics on everything, right? Like there's obsession, there's sex, there's love, there's so much that I've spoken about in there.
There's Tinder and swiping left.
Like,
I was there for that conversation, right?
those things are not even that problematic, but when you go into the darkness of your mind and you talk about, hey, I hit this dark space, I have a whole section on dark poetry in my book.
Yeah.
And those poems are extremely dark. There's even horror poetry in there. So, and here I am in a flower dress standing before you with a sunflower. You'll never imagine that I've written a horror poem inside there. So it's like people get like shaken by that thought that, wait 1 second, what lies beneath the surface could be that moving or that like dark. So that's where you kind of like find like, okay, wait, I never thought that I was bearing my soul while writing this book. And here